Good evening. This is Gloria Taylor Brown, and this is a gathering of priestesses. We are having some interesting technical issues tonight. Thea Summerdeer is with us. However, her house may have been hit by a tornado earlier today. She does know that the gutters is off, her landline is down, her internet is not working, so she is going to be joining us by phone as opposed to by video. So we will hold her in best possible space. I mean, the idea that you're getting hit by tornadoes in Asheville is kind of unheard of. She's in North Carolina, so she'll be talking with us in just a moment. And of course, my co-host, Catherine Ravenwood, is with us, and she is joining us from Albuquerque, New Mexico, where they're having fall. And I'm coming to you from Oceanside, California, where we're having summer. It's hot here. So, Thea, thank you so much for coming based on the adversity today. Yeah, so tell us what's going on first.
Well, thank you, Gloria. I'm just glad I could be with you via cell phone. You know, I don't really look at it as adversity. It's just nature doing its thing. And we had some really strong winds come through here today, unusual. And this morning, when my internet was still working, I pulled it up and saw that there were tornado watches. So it's been a windy day, and of course, even with the cloud cover, even if my internet wasn't completely down, sometimes it can go out. But we're here. That's the most important thing. We're here, and
okay.
I'm really glad to be
All right.
with you.
Well, I'm glad to hear that as well, and I'm delighted that you could join us this evening. I know we have a lot of people who are very interested in hearing you based upon the sign-ups. I'm hoping we've got people that can come, because I checked the weather too, and it does look like there's tornadoes all over the place. So I'm not sure. Who's the god of tornadoes? Typhoon? No, that would be for hurricanes.
Well, the Native American tradition is Wakinian, which is the thunder beams that come from the west, and they bring us the, all of that weather. Some of it gentle and some of it not.
Okay. Well, apparently they're extremely active right now. I was watching, and they were saying that there were something like 200 tornadoes spotted today. So,
wow.
I've lived back there in that country, and it's not way up on my list of things to do again. So anyway, we will begin tonight with the question we always begin a gathering of priestesses. Thea, would you please tell us what drew you to the path of a priestess?
Oh my, well that's a great question, and it wasn't something I think have chosen specifically if I were doing that from a mental process, but it's an interesting story, so let me just tell you the story. A friend of mine, Nicole Christine, who started the Priestess process, she's from Tucson, Arizona, and she started something called the Priestess process. She actually trademarked it. I knew her before she ever developed that process, and lost contact with her for, maybe almost 2 decades. And then I got an email from her because she wrote a book called The Making of a Magdalene. And then she was including a story in that book that was a journey that she and I had gone on together, and she was asking permission to use that story in her book. So we reconnected. And she was still in Tucson. At that time, I had moved out to North Carolina. And she said, well, I have priestesses in North Carolina, and you should look up Anya McAndrew.
Oh.
And, yeah, the Spirit literally led me to Anya McAndrew through, what we might call coincidences, but we know we're not. And long story short, I connected with Anya. She invited me to come and do her priestess process, and I kind of laughed, and I said, well, I've been doing this work for a long time. I don't need to do that. And then my husband, in his infinite wisdom, he says, I think you should really look at what the resistance is. And I felt into that, and I realized that I was so missing a community of women living here in the mountains. I was living in on the Blue Ridge Divide, a little bit isolated. And, you know, I was a midwife previously, and I had a large community of women that I worked with for a lot of years, and I was really missing that community of women. And I went, I'm going to go do the priestess process. And it changed my life. It was an incredible process, and I have a beautiful community of women as a result of that, and it just deepened my connection with the feminine and all of the work, you know, that we do on ourselves as women to, you know, clear the shadow between women and to, you know, rebirth ourselves and all of that just beautiful work. So that was what led me to what I would call priestess work, even though on some level I guess I was doing that for a long time, but not as clearly and intentionally and in community as that brought me.
Well, you know, I think the important thing in that message, and there are a number of people who've had the question, you know, why should we take a class in, you know, I've been a priestess for years, and why should I take a class in it? Someone asked me that the other day. I was saying we were going to be having a class on being a priestess. And they said, well, why should I take a class? I've been doing it. So, you know, I'd like you to talk a little bit more, not only about your resistance, if you wouldn't mind, but also about what you found once you had gotten over your resistance.
Well, what I found is that it's not so much a mental process of going to a class, but it's circle work. Mm-hmm. And when we do circle work, you know, we are the mirrors for each other. And there's a transparency that happens, an intimacy that happens when we come into circle with other women. And the focus of that process was living ceremony. So it just becomes a process and a practice that we can take into our daily life, where our life becomes living ceremony. So that was, you know, a big piece for me was those pieces.
Yeah, I do love having a circle of women. One of the issues I have right now is that the circle of my circle of women is global, but it's not very local. So, you know, that's one of the issues that I have to deal with. In fact, I've been looking at how I've isolated myself locally, and looking at different opportunities to step out and be back in the local community, because I used to be very active, and I've kind of pulled back since my husband has been ill. And, you know, it is important to have both of the global and the local, I believe.
Absolutely. Well, we are a global, you know, we are a global circle, a global network.
Yeah, and you know, that's important, and it also helps if you can touch flesh occasionally, I think.
Absolutely, we need both, I think, and we're big energy, so we touch when we're together, and right now we're always touching through our Mother, the Earth. So
right.
This is a beautiful, beautiful way that you've created a circle right here tonight.
Yeah. So, starting with midwifery. And going into being a priestess, what got you into the wisdom of the Plant Devas?
Well, you know, when I was a midwife, I used plants in my midwifery practice. And when I started practicing midwifery, that was about, 37 years ago now. And we didn't have, initially, we didn't have access to drugs, Pitocin, and things like that, and you know, lidocaine for numbing and stitching and all of that. So the plants were really important allies for us, life-saving allies. So I really began being very interested in the medicinal plants as a midwife, even though before that, my mother was a gardener. So, you know, even before that, I was exposed to her love of plants and flowers. She was an award-winning rose gardener and took me to beautiful gardens. And I remember when I was in elementary school, I did or maybe it was junior high, I can't remember now, I did a science project where I collected sap from all of these different plants and did a study of, you know, that I look at it that it was the blood of the plants, and so I've always had that interest. And then, you know, I'm also a singer-songwriter, so when I decided consciously to stop practicing midwifery, and really the reason I did that was because the legal environment was so draining. I wanted to practice the healing art, but I was fighting legislative battles to have the right to be able to catch babies at home, and started a midwifery school. And I just got burned out, and I thought, you know, I just need to take a break. And that was when I started touring as a singer-songwriter. And in that process, I married a Native American medicine man. He was also an MD, Ph.D., so he was bridging the world of modern medicine and Native medicine. And we started a nonprofit organization called Resources for World Health, and we worked with indigenous healers all over the world. So I always kind of had my fingers in it. But when I moved here to North Carolina, I was living on some very sacred land, isolated, if you will, but, you know, peaceful. I was recovering from having been on the road as a singer-songwriter for 9 years. I got burned out doing that. Funny how we live in this young-girly society that values the human doing, not the human being. So, you know, I worked hard as a midwife, got burned out, worked hard as a musician, got burned out. So I was taking a break, living on the Blue Ridge Divide, and my husband and I planted a garden there. And we had these beautiful gardens. We had a raised bed garden. We had a garden that we tilled, and did a vegetable garden. And you know, I'm here living in the Appalachians, surrounded by, you know, probably the widest diversity of herbal medicines on the planet. And I was nearing the end of my fertile years, and I knew that I would not be menstruating for too much longer. And I just got this inspiration to offer, and I'm just going to be really frank because I know I can do that with this group, but I got guidance to offer my menstrual blood along with my husband's semen to the garden. And so I did that. And I, of course, asked him, and he's called the Green Man, and he's not called the Green Man for nothing. He was born on Green Man Day, and there's more to that story, but he was agreeable. And so when I carried that out to the garden, I just asked, I said, you know, where do you want this offering? And I kept getting pulled to this one end of the garden where there was just a bunch of wild briars, you know, we call them technically black raspberries, but they're, you know, the berries that we gather here in the mountains, but they're briars, and it's kind of a wild area. And I looked over there and I went, oh God, not there. I avoid that area because it's prickly. But I kept feeling pulled back, and then I realized, well, of course, this is kind of a wild thing to do. I should offer it to the wild blackberry bushes. So I did, and in that process of making those prayers and offering what was sacred back to me, because my relationship with my husband was very sacred to me, and this was something that was very sacred to us and our connection to the earth. And as I was offering that, it was like this portal opened. And I've always been clairvoyant and clairaudient, but I hadn't really experienced anything quite like that. But it was this opening and these luminous beings that were jumping up and down, and they were so excited that I was making this offering. And they started sending me these messages, and it was so profound that I literally ran inside my computer and just started typing these messages. And over the course of time, you know, it changed my relationship with the garden. These messages started coming through, and I shared them with just one friend who I really trusted. And she said, "This is incredible." And I said, "You know, I couldn't make this stuff up. This is what's coming through." And that was the beginning of the wisdom of the Plant Devas.
Ah, well, that sounds fabulous. So, one of the things I was thinking about whenever you were talking about that is that my grandfather had a wild corner in the garden that always had to be left wild. that he was Cherokee. His family actually was from North Carolina originally, and
Wow.
my grandmother was a Virgo, so she had this very rigid, hoed and controlled garden that grew exactly how she wanted it to grow. And then there was this other piece that was Granddaddy's wild corner.
I love
And
it.
every night we had to go out there and put a little bowl of milk out there. And my grandfather told me that was for the plant fairies. Now, as I've gotten older, I figured out it was probably for the stray kitties that's who drank it up. But always every morning the milk was gone. And but it was one of my favorite places to go when I was a little girl, because I lived with my grandmother for 3 years, and was to go there and go into that wild section and to sit so quietly that the butterflies and the other little beings there would ignore me and start coming out and playing. And of course at night I would sit there and the fireflies would come out. This was in Tallahassee, Florida, so you kind of know the kind of area it was. And it was always, to me, it was like this magical place. And whenever I grew up, it was, I don't know, I guess Granddaddy finally gave in and Grandma got it or something, but it was not there anymore. But it was always, that was, for me, was part of my beginnings as a wild woman, was that little wild section. So the idea that you've got this blackberry section that you have given the fruit of your loins and your husband's loins, in effect, and that is where you began to get the downloads. I think that's even a little more magical than Raven's story about getting downloaded while she's standing in Lowe's. With concrete trying to get out the door. So anyway, so it's obvious you've had serial careers. And I want to go back to one of them, which was the singer-songwriter. I haven't seen anything or heard anything from you, and I'm not going to ask you to sing tonight. I mean, but your husband is the other partner in that, right?
Yes, we're an acoustic singer-songwriter duo.
So if people were interested, is there music available that they could find?
Absolutely. If they just go to my website, theasummerdeer.com, they can find the music through there.
Okay. I'm looking really quick here.
Yeah, and they can actually go to our website, which is theaandthegreenman.com. That's a more direct way to get there. Just go to theaandthegreenman.com. And you'll see links to CD Baby and the places that we have our music.
Oh, that is one handsome husband. I mean, you're a beautiful lady too, but that's kind of a given. We know you are.
Thank you.
So let me put this up since I'm doing screen sharing here. Let's see if I can give them a screen share of this.
Isn't technology amazing?
It is amazing, particularly when it works.
Exactly.
And we had Rose Marcus on, who's an astrologer, an incredible astrologer, last week, and she was talking about all the aspects that are going on right now. And she actually said, I don't know whether or not you want to have me on because, we've got Mercury retrograde and we've got this and we've got that and we've got the other thing. And she says, things are liable to get very muddled and turned upside down. And I told her, I says, well, that's kind of natural for us, so I'm not too worried about it. Anyway, here's Thea and the Green Man. I've got that on the screen right now. Shaman I Am. Oh, that sounds interesting. So tell me about this.
That particular song, my husband wrote that song, and that was the result of the priest process. So here we have the other side of it. So he went through the priest process with Bradford Clark Collins, and Brad was diagnosed with cancer a little over a year ago. But that song was the result of his priest process experience, and he co-wrote that with some of the men who were in the priest process with him. The beautiful recording, and we are donating half of all of the proceeds are going to Brad. Just passed away, but he has a foundation that he has created. He and his wife Starwolf, they do amazing work, and so that's going to their foundation, which is Venus Rising. And so half of the funds from the sale of that song will go to Venus Rising for their continued work.
Oh, that's fabulous. Starwolf and Brad are both were friends of ours as well. We met them whenever they were out in Eugene at Nikki Scully's. So
nice. Yeah, right on.
Okay, well,
right after they got married.
Yeah. Yeah, they had just gotten married at that time.
Well, you know what's interesting about that is they got together the same time that Chuck and I got together. And Brad's birthday was Sunday, and they just had the most beautiful memorial service for him. I've known Brad for about 25 years, a little over 25 years. His legacy will live on.
Okay, well, I see that some of the people are having trouble with the streaming as well. So I'm presuming if you're having trouble with the streaming, all I can say is we are recording, and it will be available on YouTube, and my best guess is tune in a little bit later, and we'll manage to, you'll be able to see it. I want everybody to be able to, because I do think that this is a fabulous. One of the things I was struck by is that Thea, in many ways, has had multiple careers, starting with, well, you didn't actually start with midwifery, though, did you?
Well, yeah, actually I did. You know, I started playing guitar when I was 8 years old. So I had always done that, but I was 19 when I started catching babies in South Florida. So that really was, you know, probably my earliest career.
Okay, all right. That's really young for a midwife. Of course, that's, you know, possibly it's my prejudice, but my image of a midwife is a woman in her 50s or 60s. You know, of course, I'm from the South too, so you know what my image is.
Yes, the granny midwife, and that was who we got to study with for the granny midwife. I was very fortunate to have amazing mentors, and I think part of the reason that happened was that I became a devotee of Guru Maharaji at that time, who's now known as Premra Watt. But I was part of a community of premies, meditating and being vegetarians, and, you know, we were just creating this community of spiritual seekers, and they were all having babies. About the same time as Summertown, Tennessee, and Ina May Gaskin, they were doing their thing up there in Tennessee. And so it was that era.
Okay, well, obviously you have come through a number of schools of thought. I mean, whenever you add, you know, Anya Andrew and what is his name now?
Brad and Starwolf?
No, your guru.
Premra Watt.
Premra Watt. Yeah, I just blanked on it. I'm sorry. So in the synthesis of all this, tell us, O wise one, O author of Wisdom of the Plant Devas, in synthesizing all of this, how has it informed your life, your career as a priestess?
Well, the way that I'm priestessing at this time is I have granddaughters, and being with my granddaughters is really important to me, and mentoring the young ones that wouldn't maybe have this kind of mentorship otherwise. In other words, I feel that mentorship is really important. I've always really subscribed to the apprenticeship model. So my granddaughters, and I have an herbal medicine apprentice, beautiful young woman. I teach herbal medicine, and that's the other way that it shows up for me right now, is I had a clinical practice for a while, but I have found myself being drawn more and more to teaching and doing research. So I do research, and I publish that on a blog, and I teach at various herbal medicine schools and conferences. I also teach online at Wise Woman University. So, that's really how I'm giving back right now, is in that way.
Can I ask the question?
Sure.
I'm sorry, say it again?
So, Thea, this is Raven here. I have a question for you. With your connection with the Plant Devas, what are they, if anything, what are you learning from them about where we are with this earth ecology right now? About drought and the elementals being so reflective of our own selves being out of balance, and the earth just being so strapped right now and species disappearing. Are the Plant Devas talking to you about any of that, or can you share anything about that with us?
Yes, that's a great question, and because that's a question that's very close to my heart. I've been part of the environmental music movement, and a lot of my music has been environmentally based, so I kind of had that shtick. But what I have found, and this has really surprised me, is that when I'm out in nature, and I live right up against the Pisgah National Forest, so I have access to some beautiful, forest here. Mm-hmm. And I'll give you a specific example here in a minute. But they have said that everything is in divine order. And I love the way that Susun Weed says it when she says, this is a dynamic disequilibrium, because to be really in balance is it's kind of an illusion. It's like we're never really in balance. We're always in that yin-yang flow of one thing changing into another. And when I really experienced that strongly was when I was walking in the woods here. We have a hemlock grove, and it's this very magical place. And the hemlocks here are dying from the woolly adelgid that is destroying it. And I was sitting in this hemlock grove and just, really feeling how many lifetimes of priestesses we've gathered, and we've, lit the fires and made the prayers. And I was grieving for these hemlocks that were dying. And I heard this voice that said, look up at me. And, I looked up through the dying branches, and then underneath I saw these new little hemlocks coming up, and they said, we are just going to be fine. We are fine. We will adjust. We will, the biological life on this planet will go through a transformation. The future is not yet in form. We don't know what that is. They don't call it great mystery for nothing. And I really get the messages strongly that just do the work that you're here to do today. Be of service today to whoever is in need of that, counseling or medicine or, whatever it is that we're being called to do. And that doesn't mean we can't live as consciously as possible. I certainly do. I do what I can do. And then I say the surrender prayer. I'm recycling, and I'm eating organic, and, growing a garden. I grow a garden, and, and do what I can do. And I just keep showing up to do what I'm here to do.
Thank you. That's great.
Yeah, that's a lovely answer. And I think that it's important for us to realize that no matter what is going on around us, it's important to show up and do the work. You know, sometimes we don't want to do the work. I mean, I'm sure there are priestesses in Western Africa right now who are treating Ebola patients that are going, I don't want to be here. You know, I want out of here. And I'm also sure that there are probably people in, you know, every part of the world who are going, why am I having to do this? You know, it doesn't look like what I planned or what I wanted to do, and all of a sudden I'm having to do this stuff that really isn't, you know, I'm not even sure it's priestess work. You know, my priest to look at was driving somebody around today in order to get them a driver's license. And, you know, there was part of me that was going, you know, I've got so much work to do and I need to do all these other things. And I'm going, yeah, but if, you know, if I don't do this, nobody else will. And I think sometimes that's it. If I don't do this, nobody else will. And I think that that's part of what we have to hold, is that we are, you know, if we're given a job, it's our job. And
like your grandmother, huh? Her sign.
Yeah, my grandmother had a sign in the kitchen that said, "If you see a job, it's yours." I, by the way, can ignore dirty dishes forever. Do not see it. I don't know what you're talking about, because, you know, if I saw them, I had to do them. And yeah, so I think that that's part of it. And now you're still living in the Blue Ridge Mountains, right?
Yes,
And you've lived there now for 30 years or something?
About 15.
About 15 years, okay. So that is a rather magical area of the world. And if you're going to talk to the Plant Devas, I think that's probably a good place to start. You know, as you have walked in those woods and moved in, you know, there's a lot of old traditions that say that that there was, what was it? I'm trying to remember. That was the place that the principal people, which is the Cherokees, that was the place that we came down to earth. And
yeah.
So
yeah, it's a good place to be during the earth changes. I feel so blessed and so grateful to have. I spent all of my childhood summers here. You know, I grew up in South Florida, but my parents had a home up here, and I spent all of my childhood summers here. So really, it was like coming home to me. But when I was out west, and I was starting to feel that pull, like, you know, I was supposed to go to higher ground. And, you know, I knew it was either going to be the four corners of the Southwest, or it was going to be back here to the Appalachians. And then, of course, Spirit just conspired to bring me back here. But, yeah, this is God, I just feel so blessed to be here.
Yeah, it's an interesting area of the world. I've traveled in there. We traveled all the way up into Virginia and on up to Maryland in the Appalachians a few years ago with my husband. And it's a very interesting part of the world, because you go around a corner and it's like you've entered another century. And I don't mean one in the future. So, but it's you know, it's like you're looking at something that the way it might have been 100 or 200 or 300 years ago.
Yeah, when you get deep into the hollers around here, I mean, there are Cherokee Scots who have been homesteading here for hundreds of years. It's a real throwback. It's very interesting.
Yeah, so I know that you have done some classes and teaching, and I presume you do that primarily, as you said, you do it primarily through the internet, but you also do some classes locally there, don't you?
Yes, I'm doing less, actually, because I really love to do research. You know, we have a conference here called the Southeast Women's Herbal Medicine Conference, and I've taught there, and I've done some Wisdom of the Plant Devas workshops at Isis Cove. beautiful place an hour west of Asheville, Healing Retreats Center, and there's a number of other places around here that are healing centers like the Medicine, which is a Unitarian Universalist camp and conference center. So I do get out and do workshops, and but I'm teaching more online. I'm really enjoying the international community, the outreach to the international community, and I teach Chinese 5-element theory. And
okay, you got to tell us more about what you're talking about.
Okay, so what that is it's a study of the elements, and of course, you know, I talk about the elementals in my book, and it's just another overlay of how we're in relationship with everything, about how everything is in relationship with everything else, and how everything corresponds with the seasons, and including the foods that we eat, and the herbs that nourish and nurture certain organ systems. There's organ systems that correspond with each of those elements. I have found it to be a really good diagnostic system for learning how to go in with the herbs. In other words, as an herbalist, and this is why I feel like education is so important, is that, you know, we are operating in a Western medical mechanistic model. And when people hear that I'm an herbalist, the thing I get the most is, oh, you're an herbalist. Well, you know, I've been taking this medication for this particular symptom, and I'd really like to do something alternative. Is there an herb that I can take instead of this pharmaceutical?
Mm-hmm.
That is still a Western mechanical model way of thinking, because the longest lasting results from herbs is in their tonic ability to restore whole bodily systems. And that means coming into relationship with that herb. You've got to take it over a period of time, and it's called the wise woman model, or the energetic model, which is what Chinese medicine 5-element theory is, an energetic model. So I really enjoy working in that model, because then you look at patterns. It's about, you know, getting somebody's story. You know, where did this start? What else was going on in your life? How did this unfold? And then you look at the pattern, and it may not be that you're treating the symptom, because that's just what's surfacing after probably long-running patterns. So you're actually going in, and maybe almost like a weaver who's working on a loom, and you know they put in a wrong color, and they don't see it until the pattern starts to emerge, and then you've got to kind of pull out all those threads and go back to where you missed the pattern and start with the reweave. And that's what happens is we go in and we look at, you know, where does the adjustment need to happen? On what level do the herbs need to go in to restore the bodily systems that support other bodily systems that might be producing the symptoms? So it's more dimensional.
So, Raven, do you mind if I talk a little bit about what's going on with you?
No, I don't mind.
All right. Well, Raven has a thyroid issue, and she can be more precise if she wants to be. And I think you've tried herbs and you've had trouble with them?
Well, I didn't know what to take.
Oh, okay.
I tried different things and haven't really figured it out. I have Hashimoto's, which is an autoimmune disease that attacks the thyroid. And I didn't know that that's what was wrong with me. I thought something else was going on. Well, I got diagnosed with Hashimoto's, and at that point I was in quite a crisis stage. And so I went on drugs, not knowing that once you go on thyroid medication, supposedly your thyroid quits working. So I've just been trying to get this thing balanced out for the last few years and have enough energy left to work full-time and see clients.
So, could you hear her?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
I did. And so the first thing I would say about that is, you know, when we're working with herbs, this is called health-care. It's a holistic model. It's not disease management. And so where we can have the most effect is working with people before they get to what I like to call a big D disease. Because once you move into a big D disease process, there's not that we can't still help and support, absolutely, but the systems are compromised to a point where it's kind of crossed a certain threshold.
Right.
Yeah, so there's, I would really need to get a complete history from you and
oh, right. I'm not, I don't know what Gloria wanted, but I certainly don't expect you to do any kind of a diagnosis or tell me what herbs to take. But I think that I don't have anything overall, I'm pretty healthy. I've always watched my diet pretty well and taken various herbs to support me and did body work for 15 years and tried to help other people with that. But once something hits you hard and you're not really seeing it coming, it can really knock people off. And I never thought I'd be one to make sure that my prescription got refilled on time. I never in the world thought I would be depending on a pharmaceutical prescription, but I do. And from what I talked to a woman recently who's a naturopath in Portland, and she said Hashimoto's is epidemic on the West Coast.
Well, that was part of the reason why I was bringing it up. And it was that, I wanted to take it from the general to the personal, and, Raven's my best example at this point in time because I do know there's a lot of thyroid. So if, for example, Raven appeared before you and she was going to be diagnosed in the five energy system or the 5-element system, what would you look at?
Well, again, I would want to follow the pattern because we're talking about an endocrine disorder, and there's different ways that can come about. I mean, if there was an environmental influence, that could have, what the Chinese call the postnatal jing, we'd have to look at, where did this insult begin, and how did the systems, the bodily system, organ systems like the endocrine system, or the urinary tract system, or the liver, how are these organs dealing with what the insults or the injury was, or where this began. I mean, this could go back to birth. Without me having that information, it would be hard for me to exactly say. But that's what I would do, is I would overlay it. I would go, is this something that began with the water element? Is it something that you came in with? Or was it something that you were exposed to environmentally? Or could it be a hormone imbalance? Because, all of our hormones, we have stress hormones and female hormones and all of these different hormones that are very connected to each other and can throw the whole endocrine system out. And I see a lot of women that have thyroid issues that actually have the connection is with female hormone imbalance. There's a lot of estrogen dominance meeting insulin resistance, and so and then the thyroid is compromised as a result. So it's a very interactive system, and you just have to kind of go in and see how all of these patterns play out so that we know what the story is.
Right. Oh, I understand that, and I'm still, it's. I think that the people that are listening to this, the women that are listening to this, are seeing more how this can work for them. In other words, if they were to study the subject matter or if they were consulting on it. I think one of the things that I believe, or at least my personal belief, is that it helps me if I know something about the medicine that I'm receiving, whether it's Western medicine or Eastern medicine, because whenever I go in cold, I get I get a little concerned because I don't really know what they're talking about and whether or not they're diagnosing something that makes sense, or if sometimes it's just like, what, I just don't want to take that diagnosis on. I think you can keep it. But I do want to...
that would bring me back to a point of, we all have the navigation system. And so learning to trust ourselves and our navigation system, that we're going to be led to exactly where we need to be to receive the medicine, in whatever form that is, and just really learning to trust ourselves so that we are going. I believe that we have everything that we need in every given moment. So rather than, acting out of fear, and that's part of the 6 stages of healing in the Wise Woman tradition, that first stage is to do nothing. Check in with yourself. And then the second step is to gather information. So, that's why we talk among ourselves, and, we have networks that we can reach out to and say, do a little bit of research and find out what some of the options might be, or somebody else who's experienced something similar, and gather that information.
Well, yeah, I agree, and it's in a way it's an opportunity here to speak with you to kind of get an overview of, frankly, stuff I don't know anything about. I mean, there's a lot of these events that I do, and I know quite a bit about what we're talking about, but I really don't know much about herbal medicine. It's one of those things that I've avoided almost. And I noticed that I believe you studied with Rosemary Gladstar.
No, actually, I didn't. She did write a beautiful review of my book.
Oh, okay. That's why I thought you did.
We've run in the same circles, and she's written some fabulous books. But I started studying with Susun Weed when I was a midwife. So again, going back about 37 years, I started working with her back then, and then just through the years have been fortunate to work with different herbalists. But I would say most recently, my main herbal mentor is Patricia Kyritsi Howell, and she is the founder of the Botanologos School of Herbal Studies in North Georgia. And she is the one who introduced me to 5-element theory, and I'm just so grateful for that, because it's a beautiful lens through which to see how to work with the plant medicines, again, in relationship with everything else. So it's spiritual, it's emotional, it's psychological. We're looking at all of those aspects are included, as well as the energetics of the plants and how they can support the whole human being. Because really, we're treating human beings. We're not treating symptoms. True.
Although I think that basically treating symptoms is what our Western medicine is based upon.
And, and the other thing, too, is I like to, when I'm in a relationship with someone in a healing context, because I believe all healing takes place in the context of relationship, is I believe that we are all our own healers in relationship with others who are also their own healers. So you will pull from me what you need for yourself, but I'm really just the conduit.
Right. Yeah, Raven and I are both trained alchemical healers and also certified alchemical healing teachers, which is a very different system than, I mean, we talk with, Raven talks with the Plant Devas. I'm much more of a rock person myself, so the understanding. I always have this problem where a plant shows up and I'm kind of going, okay, it's a little small plant with dusty green leaves and pink flowers. I have no idea what it is. So, hopefully it's here to help you. But
they do that. They show up where you are at the time of need. I could tell you so many incredible stories about plants that have appeared. I'll just tell you a quick little story.
Sure.
My son was having some issues with post-traumatic stress, and he had a situation that was, literally put him into post-traumatic stress. And he pulled up here in his motorhome. He drove straight here from Tucson. He was completely in shock from a loss that he had had, someone who, a very close friend of his that was murdered. And he was clearly in post-traumatic stress, pulls into my driveway, parks his motorhome. The next morning, I go out, and I'm standing in front of his motorhome, and I'm just there making prayers. And I look up the bank, and I see this little white flower that I had never seen there before, and it was really caught my attention. And I had to go around and hike up the other side of the bank and down to get to it. And lo and behold, it was Star of Bethlehem. I have never seen it there before. I have never seen it there since. It happened to bloom that spring because we had a very warm winter, and that plant, that flower essence, is used to treat post-traumatic stress.
Oh.
Flowers right in.
That's beautiful.
Wow.
Well, you know, Gloria and I used to belong to an alchemical healing circle in Seattle, and we met once a month, and we all practiced with each other to really enhance our ability to do this work. And I remember one night, as we were all doing our work, somebody would volunteer, and we would all work on them. And one night, we all saw the same etherically, because we were doing etheric work. We all saw the same little plant with electric blue flower. Do you remember that, Gloria?
Yeah.
Every single one of us had seen this plant. And we said, I don't know what it is. It's a plant I've never seen in my life. All I can tell you, it was electric blue. And I did too. Me too. Oh my gosh, I saw the same plant. None of us knew what it was, and it had shown up through every one of us for this person on the table. I never did find out what it was. I never saw it again.
Wow. Well,
I love it when they do that. I just love it. So when you say you're a conduit, I totally understand that, and I think that is a quality in a true healer, that people who don't understand that they are the conduit, it's their ego that gets in the way and nothing happens. And so to be open and to be that conduit is, if someone is really doing that like you are, then that's a real gift, because many people cannot handle that kind of a non-egoic ability to just channel the energy through. So bless you.
Well, thank you. I mean, that's the true priestess thing, isn't it? It's to be of service.
Yes.
Yeah.
And if little electric blue flowers want to come in, then okay.
You know, the first plant that came to mind when you said that was borage.
Oh, really?
It has a beautiful blue star, electric blue star flower, and it's an ancient, it comes from the Western European herbal tradition. So, you know, a lot of us who have been together in past lives doing this work, you know, come from that tradition. And, yeah, borage is, it has these little blue star flowers that are...
I don't remember what the situation of this woman was anymore. All I remember is that there were like 4 or 5 of us in the room, and we all saw the same flower. So, could have been.
But isn't borage for cleansing or for... I'm trying to remember. Like I said,
it was actually, you know, borage was actually what was called a pot herb, which means it was used, it was used to, you know, they put it in a pot and cook it like a green.
yeah.
So it was a medicine food, and it's in my book. It's the medicine of courage, and that's what borage. You know, the word borage in botanical, the botanical name means courage, and so energetically it aligns with the heart, and it's very rich in minerals. Extremely, extremely rich in mineral, and we know these days, because we've gotten all of this current awareness around the omega-6s, it's very high in omega-6s.
Oh, wonderful. So we would all do well to throw a little borage into our pots.
Yes, delicious.
Yeah, well, you know, there's a whole program or theory around food as medicine. And we have friends who studied at Fendhorn and are, you know, quite wondrous with the idea of food as medicine. And we have the opportunity in many ways, if we are willing to spend a little bit of extra time, and I'm sure getting Thea's book would probably help us, to have things in our lives that will help. Maybe they won't cure, we can't use that word anyway, but maybe they'll help treat some of the issues we've got going on. I know.
It brings the body back into it. I mean, the body is on autopilot to self-repair. So if we give it what it needs to do that, it can do that. So that's part of, I think, the ancients all knew that our food is our medicine. So it just helps bring the body back into alignment so it can, self-repair. We give it the minerals that it needs and the enzymes that it needs.
Yeah, I think that's part of your message as well, is the idea that, we do need to know a little bit more about what's going on. I was having a conversation with someone recently about the fact that most of us need selenium, to have additional selenium, because our lands are selenium poor, at least out here in the West. And you don't need very much selenium, but you do need it. So it's one of those important minerals that you have to have in your body. I know I was having the conversation with a woman whose husband has valley fever, and we were talking about how she's trying to do it without treating it with drugs. And we were talking about the idea of finding out what foods and what minerals would help him out, as opposed to just going down the Western traditional route, which is basically I think they throw antibiotics at it until it kills everything in your body.
Yeah, antibiotics. That's a whole system. But what this brings up for me as you're saying that is that it's the delivery system. Like plants, they are the perfect delivery system. They've been evolving concurrently with us, adjusting their chemistries to meet our needs. And when we take an herb, so like the difference between pharmaceuticals have their place, so please don't get me wrong with that. But the difference is in the delivery system, so that when we take an herb or we eat a food that's our medicine, is we're smelling it and we're tasting it and we're swallowing it and we're digesting it and we're eliminating it, and it's coming out through our pores, and we can smell it in our sweat. So there's a whole relationship that we have with our food and with our medicine, especially when we're doing herbal infusions and things like that, rather than just taking something in a pill or powdered in a capsule or a pharmaceutical, because and I think the reason that we see so many pharmaceutical deaths is because it passes go and does not collect $200. It just goes straight into the bloodstream, and the body has no opportunity to say, oh, whoa, wait, that's too much, or oh, that ended up over here and it should have ended up over there. If we did that with an herb, our body, we would either spit it out or put it out or shit it out, or we have a way to get rid of it.
Well, on that note, I think we're going to kind of wrap it up for the evening, but I wanted to know, what is it, other than doing research and maybe coming out with another book? Is that what we're doing now?
Yes. It's a big project to write a book, and I've been working on a couple of them, but I most recently have been working really hard on a memoir. I have shamanic stories to tell, and it's just so that people know that these realms are real and they're accessible, and that we can navigate our lives in a way that it informs us from a different place, where rather than just being programmed by all of the frequencies around us, we broadcast our own frequency, and then we learn to follow our own inner navigation system. So I'm working on a memoir, and I've also toyed with the idea of writing a book on 5-element theory, because I've taken a different approach to it, being of the Western mind. So most of the books written are from the Eastern mind, and I would love to bring it more, that's whole brain thinking. So I've been toying with that a little bit too.
Well, that sounds like a great idea. And are there any classes or events coming up for you that people might be interested in hearing about?
Yes, they can go on my website and see the classes. I teach seasonal classes. Right now, The class is Indian Summer, and that is on the digestive system. It's called Indian Summer, Nourishing the Earth Element. So you can read more about that, and then there'll be a class coming up for winter that is on the water element, which is the kidneys and the bladder. So, you know, this is a way to journey into these organ systems and into the season and learn ways to prepare food that's appropriate and to learn about different imbalances that arise from these elements and how we can come more into harmony, learn how to bring ourselves more into harmony and live with the seasons.
Wow, that sounds very interesting, and I would, like to suggest that for anyone who's interested in this material, you might want to look this up and take a look and see whether that is interesting to you, and take those classes. I think, both Raven and I could probably take that intestinal class. I think it's too bad Kimberly's not on the line tonight, the Mother House of the Goddess. She's got a program called The Hungry Goddess. I will facilitate an invitation to you two to meet, because I can tell you that she would be fascinated by your information. She's down in she's down where you used to be, down in Boca Raton, Florida. And anyway, but next, I want to thank you for being here, despite a little bit of a technical issue, and thank you for based on the difficulty of being here as well. So, and I want to thank Raven, of course, for being my co-host and being wise and wonderful as she always is. Next week we will have Judith Laxer. And,
yay!
And I'm going to flip over here and let Judith, I figure if I'm doing screen sharing, I might as well do screen sharing. This is my friend Judith Laxer, who's from Seattle, Washington, and she's a witch, and quite a wonderful one, and she has something called the Gaia Temple up in Seattle. I've been involved. I've known her for a number of years. She's been involved with the Women of Wisdom Foundation up in Seattle, and she was also a stage actress and singer, and she was also in Ladies Don't Drum, and I don't remember if she was in Crone Thunder, but she's a drummer. So maybe we can get her to tell us a little bit more about drumming, but she'll be here next week.
And she's very funny.
Yes, she's very funny. And the following week will be Ann Key, who will be here for basically our Halloween show. And we're actually filling up out into February, so if someone is interested in being on or getting a particular person on, if you'd let me know, I'd really appreciate it. The Priestess magazine is at Apple, about to be approved. Keep your fingers crossed on that one. For those in the membership group, it is available on the membership site. It's also available on a Gathering of Priestesses site group on Facebook, which is now open to anyone who wishes to join it. And I would encourage you to take a look at it. And that's on Facebook. That's a Gathering of Priestesses. And gatheringofpriestesses.com is our membership site. And in addition, let's see, you've got one more small plug here. Raven's new Spiritual Directions, A Path of Initiation, is debuting this week, and you will be getting information about that, and I'll also put some information out on that. But thank you, Thea, for being with me and being with us and teaching us so much this weekend, this evening. We really enjoyed having you here, and thank your husband, because he's actually the one that sort of brought you to my attention. And Raven, I want to thank you for being present and give you a moment of Raven is, as I always say, she's the best tarot consultant in the world. So if you want a good tarot reading, she's the one that's available. I really appreciate every one of you who are listening and seeing us, and know that, you know, we do want you to be part of our community. That's why we're doing what we're doing, why we're doing the magazine, while we're doing the groups on Facebook. This is about community for us, and it's about building a community that will last for a very long time. So thank you for being there. So glad you made it. Hope you'll come back next week. Thank you, Thea.
Thank you,